What's a secret about your job most people don't know? Story 1. As a line cook, I've seen the darker side of the culinary world. We often take food that's been returned or untouched by customers and reuse it in new dishes. It's not just it happens all the time. For instance, if someone sends back a steak because it was overcooked, we'll cut off the charred bits and serve it again in a salad or a stir-fry later. I once found out that the owner even instructed us to disguise expired ingredients with fresh ones to save costs. It's not something I'm proud of at all, but the pressure to keep food costs down is immense. One night, a customer became violently ill after eating one of our specials, and it turned out the dish contained some questionable ingredients. The restaurant faced a health inspection, and I was terrified of losing my job. Thankfully, the owner swept it under the rug, but I still feel guilty every day thinking about how many people might have been affected. The whole experience haunts me, and I've since decided that I need to find a new job where I can sleep at night. Story 2. I work in IT support, and here's the thing, we can see everything. When you think your private browsing is, well, private, think again. I've had to deal with some seriously embarrassing situations. One time, a manager called in because his computer was acting weird, and I ended up having to explain why his browser history was filled with adult sites. He was mortified, but honestly, it's a regular occurrence. What's worse is that some of my coworkers have taken it upon themselves to snoop through user data, even going so far as to leak info about personal issues to others. I once caught wind of an internal scandal involving a high-level executive who was using company resources to engage in unsavory online behavior. Instead of reporting it, management brushed it under the carpet to protect their reputation. I felt trapped, knowing that I could either stay silent and keep my job or risk everything to expose the truth. It's a constant moral dilemma, and sometimes I feel like I'm working for a company that doesn't care about ethics at all. Story 3. As a flight attendant, I've seen it all, good, bad, and downright ugly. Here's a little secret. Some passengers think they can get away with anything. I once had a guy try to sneak a whole bottle of whiskey on board, claiming it was medical. When we found it, he got belligerent and tried to argue his way out of it. That was just the tip of the iceberg. There was another incident where a first-class passenger got so intoxicated that he harassed a female flight attendant to the point where she had to lock herself in the galley. The airline's response? They swept it under the rug, telling us not to escalate it further. It made me realize that the well-being of employees often takes a backseat to maintaining a luxury image. This industry is full of unspoken tragedies, like the mental toll it takes on flight attendants who are forced to smile through harassment and abuse. It's a reality we can't escape, and many of us are. Sometimes, I have to adjust grades to keep parents happy. I had a parent threaten to pull their child out of my class over a C, and I ended up bumping the grade up to a B just to avoid the headache. But it doesn't stop there. I've witnessed colleagues falsifying attendance records to keep their jobs and avoid scrutiny from the administration. There's a culture of corruption that's so pervasive that it's almost normal. The principal is more concerned about retention rates than the actual education we provide. One day, a student of mine who was struggling with depression committed suicide after receiving a poor grade on a project. I can't shake the feeling that if I had been more honest with him, or if the administration hadn't put so much pressure on grades, things could have turned out differently. The guilt is overwhelming, and I wish I could change the system, but it feels like an uphill battle. Story 5. I work in HR, and let me tell you, it's a minefield. People think we're there to help, but honestly, we're often just cleaning up messes. I've had to cover up some pretty scandalous affairs between employees, including one between a manager and a subordinate that could have gotten both of them fired. What really shocked me was when I found out that the manager was using his power to manipulate the employee into silence, threatening her job if she spoke out. I confronted my boss about it, and instead of taking action, he told me to stay out of it because it would cause too much drama. I felt trapped between doing the right thing and keeping my job. Eventually, the employee left the company, and I'm left with the haunting knowledge that I could have done something but didn't. The office politics are toxic, and every day I question whether I'm on the right side of this. Story 6. As a real estate agent, I have a confession. We often stretch the truth to make a sale. I once had a client who wanted to sell a house with a serious mold problem. Instead of disclosing it, we staged the home and made it look perfect for showings. I felt terrible knowing that the new owners would find out the hard way. But with high commissions on the line, the pressure to sell overrides ethics sometimes. The tragedy hit hard when I learned that the new family had a child with severe asthma, and the mold exacerbated her condition to a point where she had to be hospitalized. I tried to reach out to them anonymously to apologize, but it felt too late. My conscience is a heavy burden, and I've since decided to leave the industry. I can't be a part of something that endangers people's lives for profit. Story 7. I'm a graphic designer, and here's the truth. A lot of what we create never sees the light of day, and it's often for ridiculous reasons. I once spent weeks designing a logo for a big client, only for them to reject it because they didn't feel it. What's worse is that our agency often takes credit for designs that junior designers come up with, and we've been told to keep quiet about it. I witnessed one talented intern get her work stolen by a senior designer who presented it as his own. This culture of corruption has left many of us demoralized, but we stay silent because we fear losing our jobs. One day I received a call from that intern, deeply depressed after realizing her hard work was stolen. She ended up leaving the industry altogether, and it broke my heart. It's a constant reminder of how cutthroat this field can be, and I often wonder who else will fall victim to the same fate. Story 8. I work in retail, and here's a juicy secret. There are hidden sales and discounts that only employees know about. One time I accidentally overheard a manager discussing how to mark up prices just before a sale to make it look like customers were getting a deal. The corruption runs deep. We have been instructed to hide damaged items in the back to avoid marking them down. I once found out that an employee was stealing returned items and reselling them as new, pocketing the cash. When I reported it, nothing was done. It gets worse. I later learned that a customer who bought one of those new items ended up injured because it was defective. The manager simply swept it under the rug, prioritizing profits over safety. The whole environment feels toxic, and every day I question whether I want to stay in a job that puts money above people. Story 9. As a janitor, I've discovered some wild things while cleaning offices. One time I found a stash of adult magazines hidden in a drawer of a very professional office. I also found a love letter that detailed an office affair with employees. When I tried to report it, I was immediately dismissed and told to mind my own business. I felt like I was in a David versus Goliath situation, and it was terrifying. Weeks later, I found out that one of my coworkers was fired for speaking out about the same issues. It's hard to wash away the guilt of knowing that I could have done something but chose to stay silent out of fear. I can't help but feel trapped in a system that prioritizes profits over justice. Story 10. I work in a call center, and let me tell you, the stories I could tell would blow your mind. One of my coworkers pretended to be a customer while on the phone just to mess with a particularly rude caller. It ended in chaos, and we all had a good laugh, but I can't help but think about the ethical implications. Behind the humor lies a darker truth. The management encourages us to upsell products to vulnerable customers, even if they don't need them. I once had a call with an elderly woman who could barely afford her bills, and I felt pressured to convince her to buy additional services. I hung up feeling sick to my stomach. Later I learned that she had canceled her service altogether because she couldn't afford it anymore. The guilt hit hard when I found out she lost her internet connection, which she relied on for telehealth appointments. It's a harsh reality, and I often wonder how many lives we impact negatively for the sake of profit.